It was supposed to be just another normal drive through the city. Christopher sat comfortably in the backseat of his luxurious black SUV, casually scrolling through emails and business forecasts on his phone. The windows were slightly fogged from the early morning drizzle, and the streets outside bustled with people holding umbrellas and rushing to wherever they needed to be. For someone like Christopher, a man who had it all, wealth, power, prestige, the world outside often felt distant, like a movie he wasn't really a part of anymore. As his car slowed at a traffic light near a narrow intersection, something outside the window caught his eye. It was quick, just a glimpse, but enough to make him shift in his seat and glance again. There, on the sidewalk beneath the overhang of a closed storefront, sat a woman. She looked exhausted, her shoulders hunched forward protectively, and her hands wrapped around a small child bundled in a coat far too big. Two other kids sat beside her, motionless and quiet, staring at the ground. A small cardboard sign rested in front of them, too wet to read clearly. The woman's hair was wet from the rain, clinging to her cheeks, and her eyes darted around with a mixture of fear and shame. At first, Christopher barely paid her any attention, his mind quickly categorizing the scene as another unfortunate story in a city full of them. But something held him there. His gaze sharpened. There was something about her face, a familiarity that made his chest tighten. He leaned closer to the window, brows knitting as he stared. Time seemed to slow. His driver, confused, glanced back in the rearview mirror. "Sir," the driver asked quietly. Christopher didn't respond. His voice caught in his throat. His heart skipped a beat. That face, those eyes, it couldn't be. Could it? Suddenly, he spoke. "Pull over. Stop right here." The car eased to the curb, and Christopher pressed his palm against the window, staring more intently than before. Now he was sure. The woman sitting on the soaked pavement, cradling those children, was Cassandra, the one woman he had ever truly loved, and the one he had walked away from all those years ago. Christopher's mind raced as he opened the door and stepped out into the drizzle. The driver tried to object. "Sir, are you sure you want to?" But Christopher didn't hear a word. His expensive shoes splashed into a shallow puddle, and he walked briskly toward the woman on the sidewalk, his heart pounding harder with every step. Cassandra didn't notice him at first. Her attention was fixed on calming the smallest child in her arms, who had begun to whimper softly. She rocked him gently, whispering something under her breath, soothing words only a mother could offer, while brushing strands of wet hair away from his forehead. The other two kids, a boy and a girl no older than 6 or 7, leaned against her sides like anchors, hungry, tired, and quiet beyond their years. "Cassandra," Christopher finally said, his voice almost cracking. It was more breath than sound, but she heard it. Her head jerked up, and their eyes locked. For a moment, neither of them said a word. The world around them blurred into silence, the city noise falling away as Cassandra's expression shifted from confusion to shock, and then to something deeper. A wound reopened. A flicker of pain flared in her eyes before she looked down, tightening her grip around the child in her arms. Christopher took another step forward, drenched now by the misting rain. It's really you," he said softly, almost like he was talking to a ghost. "Cassandra, what do you want?" She cut in sharply, not looking at him. Her voice was raw. It wasn't anger, not entirely, but the exhaustion of someone who'd carried too much pain for too long. Her eyes flicked back up to him, guarded, suspicious. "I saw you. I couldn't believe it. You disappeared," he said, still stunned. "No," she replied bitterly. "You disappeared, Christopher. Don't rewrite the story now." He flinched. The boy beside her looked up at him, blinking curiously. There was something unsettling in the resemblance. The eyes. The shape of the chin. Christopher's gaze lingered. "Are these—" He didn't finish the sentence. Cassandra pulled the children closer. "They're mine. That's all you need to know." Christopher's breath caught. The rain kept falling, soaking into the cracks of a moment that should have never existed. He had questions, so many, but one truth already echoed through his mind. He had left her. And now, standing in front of her and the children he might have never met, he couldn't escape the weight of what he'd done. Christopher stood frozen, unable to tear his eyes away from the children. His brain was scrambling to piece it all together. Could they really be his? Had all these years passed while his own kids, his flesh and blood, grew up cold and hungry on the streets? Cassandra shifted slightly, as if preparing to leave. "We don't need your pity," she said quietly, but firmly. "We've made it this far without you. We'll keep going." Christopher instinctively reached out. "Wait. Please don't go. At least tell me what happened. Why didn't you reach out?" Her laugh was low and bitter. Reach out? After the way you left me. She shook her head slowly. You vanished without a word, Christopher. One day, you were whispering promises in my ear. The next, you were gone, like I never existed. His chest tightened. It wasn't like that. I was You were what? She snapped, her voice rising. Busy being rich? Busy forgetting about the girl who gave you everything she had? I was pregnant, Christopher. And I waited. I waited so long, thinking maybe you'd come back. But you didn't. The rain had turned to a light drizzle now, but the cold between them remained. Christopher swallowed hard, words catching in his throat. I didn't know, he murmured. I swear, Cassandra, I didn't know you were pregnant. Well, now you do, she said. So what are you going to do about it? The question hit him like a truck. What was he going to do? Cassandra looked away, eyes scanning the crowd behind him. This isn't a fairy tale, Christopher. You don't get to show up and fix everything with your wallet and your regrets. Life doesn't work that way. He felt shame creeping over him like a second skin. She was right. He had vanished, left her to carry the burden alone. And yet, here she was, still standing. Stronger than he remembered. Fierce, even in rags. I don't want to fix this with money, he said quietly. I want to know them. If you'll let me. Cassandra's eyes softened just a fraction, her guard wavering for the briefest moment. But then she shook her head. We're not your redemption arc, Christopher. We're not here so you can feel better about yourself. She turned to walk away, and the children followed, the smallest one stumbling as he clung to her hand. Christopher stood in the middle of the sidewalk, soaked and speechless, watching the woman he once loved disappear into the crowd. And he knew, deep in his bones, this wasn't over. Not even close. Christopher couldn't sleep that night. The image of Cassandra's tear-streaked face, her defiant stance in the rain, and the children's hollow eyes haunted him. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling of his penthouse, the silence pressing down on him like a weight. The luxury that once gave him comfort now felt sterile, empty, meaningless. In the morning, he didn't go to work. For the first time in years, he canceled his meetings and skipped his boardroom appearances. Instead, he found himself walking the streets near the shelter, hoping, praying for a glimpse of them. He knew it was foolish, maybe even pathetic, but something inside him refused to let it go. By the third day, his persistence paid off. He saw them. Cassandra was seated on a park bench, a tattered blanket wrapped around the kids. One of them was coughing, a deep, dry sound that sliced through Christopher's chest like glass. He approached slowly, not wanting to scare them. She looked up and instantly stiffened. You again, she said flatly. Don't you have a company to run? I do, he replied, stopping a few feet away. But right now, this matters more. Cassandra rolled her eyes. So what now? You're going to buy us a house and think everything's forgiven? Christopher shook his head. I don't want to buy forgiveness. I want to earn it. I need to do something. Please, let me help the kids. At least let me take them to a doctor. The little one, he's sick. Her lips pressed into a line. She looked at the boy, then back at him. A war waged behind her eyes, pride versus practicality. After a long pause, she nodded. Fine. Just the doctor. But don't think this changes anything between us. Christopher didn't smile. He knew better. But he whispered a quiet thank you as he reached for his phone to call his private physician. Later, at the clinic, the doctor confirmed what Cassandra had feared, pneumonia, caught from weeks of sleeping in damp conditions. Her hands trembled as she held her child's small frame, her eyes wide with guilt. Christopher paid for the treatment without a word. As they left, he handed her a card. This is the address of a furnished apartment. 1 month is paid. No strings attached. Just so the kids can recover in a warm bed. She stared at the card for a long time, then took it wordlessly. He turned to walk away, but her voice stopped him. Christopher, she said. Why now? He paused, then looked back. Because I lost everything that ever mattered. And now that I've found it again, I'm not letting it slip away without a fight. The apartment Christopher had arranged wasn't extravagant, but it was warm, clean, and safe, a world away from the cold street corners and park benches Cassandra and her children had called home. That night, as she tucked her children into real beds with fresh sheets and full bellies, she found herself overcome with emotion. For the first time in years, she cried, not from despair, but from fragile relief. Still, Cassandra refused to let her guard down. When Christopher visited the next day, bringing groceries and a small toy for each child, she met him at the door with crossed arms and a wary stare. I told you this doesn't change anything, she said sharply. I know, he replied gently. I'm just glad they're safe. That's all. Despite herself, she let him in. Over the following days, Christopher visited more often, never pushing, never demanding. He helped cook meals, brought over books for the kids, even read them bedtime stories. The children grew attached to him quickly. They called him Mr. C and would light up whenever he arrived. Cassandra, however, remained distant. While grateful, she was still wrestling with the pain of abandonment, the bitterness of lost time. One evening, as they sat together after the kids had gone to sleep, she finally asked what had been burning inside her for years. "Why did you leave me?" she whispered. Christopher swallowed hard. "Because I was a coward. I let my father convince me that I'd lose everything if I stayed with you, that I needed to marry someone of status to preserve the company image. I told myself I'd come back for you when I had more power. But I didn't. I let time and guilt bury the truth. And now," she asked, voice cold, "now I see that power means nothing without love, without a family, without you." Silence hung between them. Then Cassandra said, "Do you know what broke me the most?" Christopher looked up. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was giving birth alone, holding our child in my arms while wondering if I should tell him who his father was. Christopher's voice cracked. "You don't have to forgive me, but I want to be there for him, for you. Whatever you'll allow." She looked at him for a long time. "I don't know," she finally said. "But for now, you can keep showing up. Let's start there." From that moment on, Christopher kept his word. He showed up, not with grand gestures or money, but with consistency, humility, and presence. Every morning, he would walk the kids to school. Every evening, he would help with homework, cook simple dinners, and wash dishes beside Cassandra like it was the most natural thing in the world. Slowly, the cracks between them began to close. One evening, their son, 10-year-old Eli, walked into the living room, holding a photo he had found in Cassandra's old belongings. It was worn and slightly torn, but unmistakable. A younger Christopher and Cassandra, arms wrapped around each other, eyes filled with laughter and dreams. "Mom?" Eli asked, tilting his head. "Is this you and Mr. C?" Cassandra's breath caught. She looked at Christopher, unsure what to say. Christopher rose from his chair, knelt beside Eli, and said gently, "Yes, it is. That was from a time when your mom and I loved each other very much. And you, Eli, you came from that love." Eli blinked, stunned. "So, you're my dad?" Christopher's eyes shimmered. "Yes, son, I am." There was silence. Then Eli threw his arms around Christopher and whispered, "I knew it. I hoped." Cassandra stood frozen, tears silently running down her cheeks. The moment she had feared for years was unfolding, and yet it didn't shatter anything. It healed. As weeks turned into months, their lives began to stabilize. Christopher arranged for Cassandra to take over the management of a local community kitchen, not out of charity, but because he saw her strength, her leadership, and her relentless compassion. She thrived in that role, regaining not just stability, but purpose and pride. Meanwhile, word got out that the once arrogant heir of a corporate empire was living in a modest neighborhood, raising a son with the woman he'd once left behind. Some mocked him. Others whispered. But Christopher didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was exactly where he wanted to be. One rainy night, as they sat together on the old sofa, Cassandra quietly took his hand. "I'm still angry," she said. "But I also see the man you've become." Christopher nodded. "I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm just grateful for this one." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "That's a start," she whispered. And for them, it was.